Hello and welcome to today's Linkability webinar, creating compelling content that unlocks the power of LinkedIn. I'm your host, Lynnaire Johnston, and thank you so much for joining us. We so appreciate your support. There have been many changes to LinkedIn since we last covered the topic of content. So today's your chance to get acquainted with new techniques and catch up with any updates that you've missed along the way. Do please feel free to drop your questions into the comments for me to answer once I've finished my presentation today. I always enjoy knowing what it is that's on your mind and seeing how I can help. Now, before we begin today's presentation proper, I want to ask you a question. How well do you think you use LinkedIn? Are you a newbie? Have you been using it for some time? Or do you feel you've truly tapped into the power of LinkedIn? Well, we've put together a quiz for you to assess where you're at with LinkedIn and in the process give you ideas for what else you might do to get more out of the platform. It's quick and easy, and we've put it on our website for you to download whenever you wish. You'll see the link for that in the chat and on the screen as well. All you have to do when you download it is just check each item on the list that you already have in place or are doing on LinkedIn. Count up the number of checks and determine which category you fall into. From there, you can make changes to your profile and your presence that will help you achieve your professional goals. Now, if you need help, we have lots of free info here at Linkability. We've got some paid resources. Of course, we have books too and other ideas to enable you to find new and better ways to use LinkedIn. We'll put that link into the chat and on the screen as well. And now let's get on with talking about creating compelling content that unlocks the power of LinkedIn. Here's what we're going to be covering today. Now, it won't be any surprise to you that posting content on LinkedIn has many advantages. It can increase your visibility, enhance your brand, promote your personal brand, bring in business, and find you new employment. And that's just the beginning. The power of LinkedIn, when used well, is awe-inspiring and creating quality, unique content that your audience wants to read, hear, and watch is an excellent way to unlock it. So let's have a look at how you do that. First, a recap on the current situation. You'll know, of course, that posts come in a variety of formats. I often talk about this. There's text only, image, video, document, poll, article, and of course, the newest one, newsletter. But from time to time, the algorithm changes and posts are boosted and given an additional push when that happens. And that happens quite often, but not always. And it's mostly the case when a format is new. So, for example, for most of this year's polls have been hugely popular. They've been appearing regularly in our feed, some may say too often, and they've been achieving high numbers of votes and excellent overall views, but not any longer. Their power seems to have diminished significantly, and we're not only seeing fewer of them, but we are using them less often because they're not getting the same votes or the same views. Now, we're still able to use them, however. They've not been taken away like LinkedIn did with stories not that long ago. So if polls have declined, what's performing best now? Well, without a doubt, that's document posts. These are also called carousels sometimes, but that's not to be confused with the newly announced carousel format that I'll talk about a little later. Document posts are slide shares or PowerPoint or keynote presentations put together specifically for the LinkedIn audience. They are multi-page affairs, often professionally designed with colourful colour pages or cover pages and attention-grabbing titles. They can also be ebooks, and we've had great success with these. In fact, it's entirely likely that this webinar will end up as an ebook that's offered via a post. Our document posts often achieve thousands or even tens of thousands of views, although this can vary. It seems cyclical. Your post may do very well for a week or two, and then for no reason that you can fathom, they might just fall away. It swings and roundabouts. Just don't give up is our advice on that one. The document posts that we prepare for our clients also do well, and they love them. Document posts on company pages. And now these also seem to perform better than other post formats at present, and they look good in the page feed. So do add them to your content plan if you have one for your page. Now, on the downside, yes, there are downsides to document posts. They take time to put together, usually several hours, I find. So you won't be wanting to do those all the time. I aim for one a week, but you might find that once a fortnight or every 3 weeks is enough for you to be able to manage. We create ours in Canva because we like the way they look, but PowerPoint or Keynote would also do just as well. Now, back in May, I started noticing an increase in the number of self-portrait posts in my feed. Some were great, some were not so good, but they seemed to be getting good engagement. So I decided to experiment with it and see how it went. Now, what you need to bear in mind with this as I talk about this is that image posts have never done well for me, ever. Unless I put somebody who's famous in them, then they go really well. So I'm working off a low bar when I'm talking about image posts for us. So when looking at how others created theirs, I decided that if I was going to put my face on these, which I wasn't really thrilled about doing, I must admit, then I was going to do them as professionally as possible. So for me, that meant making them useful where possible. So I put my first one up on a Sunday, which is not a busy day for content, and so you wouldn't expect to get too many views on something on a Sunday. And as of yesterday, it's received 19,000 views. Now, any of my previous ones were lucky to attract 1,000 views. So since then, of course, on the back of this, I've added them consistently to my post mix. And while they don't always do well, they often do, and sometimes exceedingly well, but they always do better than those original image posts that we used to use. They're ideal for a number of things, and one of them is for promoting your face as your brand. People immediately gravitate towards images with people in them. That's just natural. And you become recognizable if you do this on a regular basis. Now, don't be afraid that you're not Miss World. I'm definitely not, but remember that people want to see the real you, and this is another way to show your true self. You can also add your hashtag, your name, potentially your website, although the latter won't be live. Links in LinkedIn aren't live, and certainly not on images. But all of these will accentuate and promote your brand. So let's take a look at the different ways to be able to look at self-portrait posts, different ways to actually to do those. And it looks to me as if I have lost my link to LinkedIn, which is going to make life a little bit difficult if in fact we are still even live on LinkedIn. So if you could just give me a moment or two, I will dig out our link and try and get us back onto our LinkedIn live feed, because it does seem to me that we have lost that. So according to the link that I've got on my screen, that's exactly what's happening at the moment. So if you wouldn't mind just bearing with me while I make sure that we get back to our link again here onto LinkedIn. Sometimes these things can happen when there are a lot of people who are on the feed at the moment. So hopefully now we have reconnected again and we are back live. But I can't say that I'm entirely certain about that. So what I'll do is I will keep on going. Thank you. My team member has just told me that we are all good. So I'm just going to keep on going. So now, where was I? So let's have a look at the different kinds of self-portrait posts that there are, because there are quite a number of different things that you can do. Now, the first one of these is a single and simple photo of yourself. Now, often these are taken in non-work situations, but not always. They can be funny, they could be cute, they could be oddball. I've seen some really interesting ones. But anything else that you fancy that you think will be good for a self-portrait post is a good idea. You'll be center stage, larger than life in the photo, because the image is all about you. Then there are those with a professional edge, and this is an example of that. So it is a professional photo of yourself accompanied by text. This might be a summary of the accompanying post. It could be a call to action for the post, which you'll hear more about shortly. It could be a quote from the post, or you might want to pose a question. The aim of all of these is to stop the scroll. When it shows up in feeds, you want the person seeing it to stop and at least read the text and then hopefully look at the post as well. As someone who likes to share value, I tend to make these useful in some way. So one other option that I haven't yet used, and I actually must give it a try, is to add a link in here. And this might be the best solution for wanting to share a link in a post, but not actually wanting to put it in the post or in the comments themselves. A third way to create a self-portrait post is to add your photo to the front of your document post. Now, again, this promotes your face as your brand and increases the likability factor. All your document posts, or all of ours anyway, and even those on our company page, now have my face on them, for better or worse, although I keep these much smaller than I do on the image posts. When you set up an event, a live or now an audio event, LinkedIn requires you to have an image. And this is where you add your photo. So every time that the link is shared for the event, your photo goes with it. Again, my image is on every one of these. When I have a guest, I also add their image too. Now, self-portrait posts are performing really well, as I've said, but with a capital B. There are some issues to be careful of, and I think these are worthy of keeping in mind when you decide to do self-portrait posts. I think they've got lots of merits, but the first problem that you might come across is that not everyone likes them. And they may skip past what would otherwise be a useful post if they see your photo. However, I see that risk as being very low. And here's the thing, if they feel like that when they see your photo, they're not your tribe anyway. The second issue that you might come across is overuse, and people can get very quickly sick of seeing the same old thing, which is why we always advise using different post formats. But we also advise caution with overdoing these, and we don't use them more than once a week as image posts because, as I've already said, my face also appears on events and document posts. So there is too much of a not so good thing. The third thing to watch out is making them all the same. People like variety, but they also like familiarity. So change the components from time to time. So you might want to, for example, have your photo on the left of one, then on the right of the next. You could change the design elements or the main colors, although you should always keep it in line with your company branding. Now, I recently saw a post of someone painting her office, and while it seemed a perfectly benign image to me, she reported a departure of followers who were not so enamored of the, unfortunately, of of her post. They will likely have seen it as being reminiscent of Facebook and just not be keen on those kind of posts. So I often find, though, that in situations like this, that people haven't taken the trouble to read the post to gain the context, and they make assumptions which may or may not in fact be true. But if you spot a significant decrease in follower numbers that you can't attribute to anything else but your self-portrait post, then do take heed. Perhaps your audience isn't quite ready for them, because all our audiences are different. So if you use self-portrait posts yourself, do tell us about them in the comments and how well they're doing for you. Let's move on now to common posting mistakes. In our work, we not only create a lot of posts for our clients, but we also see a lot of posts. And it's fair to say that overall the quality has improved a great deal in the past few years. Well, partly we think that's because people have become more experienced at them, so they're no longer making the mistakes that they might have done once, but also they're seeing better quality posts in their feeds and are being led by example. As well, there are people like me sharing what works and what doesn't, helping teach LinkedIn members and creators to improve their posts. But we still see people making mistakes. And sometimes that's because they don't know, and sometimes it's because what wasn't a mistake last week is a mistake today. So let's start this section of the webinar here. Dutch social seller Richard van der Blom is the world's expert on the LinkedIn algorithm. Each year, he produces a report on all aspects of it to help us all get better results from the time that we spend on LinkedIn. He's in the middle of preparing this year's report, and this week he posted about something he spotted that most of us are getting wrong. And we're getting it wrong because yesterday it wasn't wrong. And it is adding a call to action at the end of a post designed to encourage engagement or comments on the post. Now, most of us, including me, do this routinely, but he's now saying that the algorithm is penalizing posts that do that. And in any of the other ways that I've got listed here, which came directly from his post. Thank you, Richard. Now, this is annoying to say the least, but my experience is that it's wise to generally follow Richard's advice because he monitors thousands of LinkedIn profiles to get his results. So what are the alternatives if we're not allowed to use the things that we've been using all along? Well, we want people to comment on our posts, of course, because that's the holy grail of posting. But how do we go about this without using those examples that I shared in that previous slide? Well, in my opinion, the best way is to write a post that people naturally engage on. If, like me, you've had a post that's attracted an unusual number of high-quality comments without any of the usual prompts, go back, have a look, and see if you can determine what made it so comment-worthy. Then try to recreate it the next time you're preparing a post. Other ideas that Richard shared in his post about this are inviting opinions, especially differing ones, just without adding in the comments below. And instead, perhaps, I'd love to hear your opinion. That might cover it. Now, in the same post, Richard warned of sending your posts to connections and colleagues with the aim of having them comment. Now, I find this perplexing, as that's what the send button is for, in my opinion. But he goes further and suggests that you don't request engagement on LinkedIn at all, even via direct messaging. Well, that's just curiouser and curiouser. Now, we haven't tested this out, but we will in the weeks ahead, and we'll probably try alerting people via a Facebook group or via email, although it does seem a lot of effort to go to, and I'm not sure that we'll, over time, continue to do that. On company pages, you might recall there's an option to notify employees about posts. So the question is, does this apply to that form of encouraging engagement as well? Well, I'm guessing that time is going to tell on this one. Mistake number 2. This is something I've been seeing a lot more recently too. And it's using a headline or first sentence and then nothing more until the see more button is triggered. Now, this is an attempt to game the algorithm because clicking see more tells it that the person is interested in the post and it's therefore useful and should consequently be dispersed to a wider audience, which it then duly does. It's entirely possible that LinkedIn is onto this rort and has adjusted the algorithm already to downgrade such posts. Now, I'm not a fan of this type of post. I don't like the way it looks in my feed. And unless the headline or first sentence is highly riveting, I'm not likely to be inclined to take the time to look at it. However, I will say that this is how I behave, and it may not be how you or your audience behaves or uses LinkedIn. Again, if you're using this type of post and are happy to share your findings, please do so in the comments. We'd be interested to know. Let's move on to number 3. Not including hashtags. It's widely understood and believed that posts without hashtags have restricted reach. No secret there. However, I was reading a post this week about from an author who claimed that 2 of his 3 top performing recent posts had no hashtags. And so he therefore concluded they're rubbish. Now, I don't agree, and our posts always include hashtags because, well, why would you not? We choose a mix of high-performing general hashtags, industry-related hashtags, and a personal one. 3 to 5 hashtags per post is generally considered optimal. Some people turn keywords in their posts into hashtags, but there's no evidence that this helps with reach, and it, I feel, can detract from your message. So we generally steer clear of them, except in specific circumstances, such as wanting to mention the company page in a post from a profile. The next one up is something similar to we've already seen, a variant on my previous point about the one line of text only. In this situation, there may be 2 lines, but it's clear there's nothing more because the see more button isn't even visible. Posts without sufficient text score low on the algorithm dwell time scale, and that reduces reach. Now, they can be read in an instant and scrolling resumed. So posts like this often don't get the expected reach or the engagement because there's simply not enough for people to get their teeth into. It also doesn't help your credibility or showcase your expertise. Now, the exception, of course, is if there's an accompanying document post which contains all the pertinent information. But even then, there's still no hashtags, are there? And the 5th one is poor quality. Now, we still regularly see posts of poor quality, and this could be because they're trying to sell, and that's all they're trying to do. The format is poor, like the one you can see in this example, or it's filled with mistakes. Could even be plain boring to read, or they've used no emojis to give it any visual impact. So we suggest that always put yourself in the shoes of your audience when creating your posts. What do they want to read? What do they want to know about? And how can you solve their problems without pitching? Ask yourself if you would read your own post. If not, then you would have work to do. All right, let's look at ways to gain visibility and traction on your posts. Given everything that we've talked about so far, how do you stand out in the feed with your posts? So one option, of course, is to vary your posts, particularly the format. There will need to be some common elements because, as I said already, familiarity is important. Equally, you need to post consistently, and I've talked about this a lot in the past, so that people get used to seeing you in the feed. But if you want to stand out, truly stand out, then being controversial might be a winner. You'll have to defend your stance, of course, but if you're prepared to publicly declare your position on something that might not be a popular view, then you'll already likely have your arguments marshalled. However, don't do this for the shock value. That rarely works and it often backfires. Also, recommend keep away from political or religious content unless you are in either of those industries. Being topical is slightly different. Now, an example of this is the number of posts we've seen in recent weeks on the back of the US Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe versus Wade and to publicly state that it's gunning for other long-held human rights. This is indeed topical and deserves airing because of its potential impact on everyone, not just women. The same could be said of climate crisis topics. These also impact our work lives and are worthy of discussion on LinkedIn. Reporting something new in your industry or area of expertise will also gain you a good following. You'll probably be aware that this is something I do a lot of, sharing new LinkedIn features. So not only am I helping a lot of people who might not otherwise hear about them, but I'm cementing my reputation as someone who knows about LinkedIn and can therefore help others wanting to understand it. Now, I come from a journalism background, so reporting style posts come naturally to me. A post style that we're seeing a lot more of, for better or for worse, is the story. People are sharing things that happen to them, usually work-related, but often personal. And over the past 2 years, there's been a significant rise in the number of posts about mental health, for instance. And when it's men sharing about this, their posts tend to do very well. Now, this has its detractors, of course, who see LinkedIn as becoming too like Facebook. However, if your story's work-related, then it's worth trying this form of post. Certainly, posts like this are often the ones that go viral. And allied to this is sharing personal news, a new job, of course, but often a milestone or an event that's been participated in, often for charity. All make good LinkedIn posts. If you have a new job, though, don't use the pre-formatted posts for this that LinkedIn offers, as they get almost no reach. And the final way, probably the best way to get traction on your posts, is to engage on other people's. It may sound counterintuitive, I know, but it's been found time and again to positively affect the reach of your own posts. Now, sometimes that's by quite a significant margin, and that's because the rule of reciprocity is at play here, as it is in other parts of LinkedIn and in life too, of course. The more you give, the more you gain. Now, a new form of post altogether is wending its way towards us, albeit a bit slowly so far, and only a few select people have this as of yet, but I'd say that by the end of the year, it'll be available to all of us. And this is officially being called a carousel post, which is not to be confused with the multiple image posts or document posts, which are often both referred to as carousels. It's confusing, isn't it? This one will take some getting our heads around, I think, in terms of creating them, because they're a composite of video, text, GIFs, graphics, music, and who knows what else. They play like a video, although there's a facility to click forwards and backwards, just like document posts. This will significantly increase our ability to be relevant, visual and entertaining, I think. Now, I've only seen 2 so far. Neither of them were particularly great, but that's perfectly understandable, I think, in these initial stages where people are just trying them out. I've no doubt we'll soon see some pretty good examples, as the people who do have this available to them now are being personally guided by LinkedIn. But I'm certain that for the tech averse among us, including me, there'll be some challenges in putting these together, but no doubt Canva will have some templates available pretty quickly for us to play with. Now, turning events into content, into posts and content is something I think is worth spending a bit of time on, particularly because we are seeing more LinkedIn Lives and now the audio events feature. Because content or posts don't have to be created in isolation. And we're seeing a lot more of previously repurposed material. So material that's been used somewhere else and repurposed in a different format and used again. So there's a number of reasons why people repurpose content. That could be time, to reach a different audience, the resources that are available, and it all makes great sense to do that because you put a lot of effort into it. And I was on a podcast recently with Fanny Dunnigan where she talked about the different ways to use content from events. So let's take a look at how you can do that to broaden your reach. And we'll start with audio events because this has just rolled out and I'm very excited. You might have been given access to this, and if that's the case, it will be likely because you have creator mode turned on. Most people who have creator seem to have this already, and that's for hosting an event. You don't have to have the feature available to be able to get onto an audio event and take part. Now, if you don't know what audio events are, they're based on the Clubhouse format, and that's where a number of people gather together in what's known as a room and have a live discussion. The host can invite people from the audience to speak, and the idea is that it's more of a conversation than a presentation, and so more informal, say, than a LinkedIn Live like this. These have only started to become widely available in the past few weeks, and we just got it at the weekend, and so we're holding our first one next week, and we hopefully have a link for that, and if you'd like to come along and see what that's all about, you would be most welcome. We're going to be experimenting with how they work, so do feel free to join us if you would like to. It's a good place to make mistakes. Now, these aren't yet available on Pages, and they have a few downsides because they are so new. Most notably at this point, there's no replay. So if you don't attend live, you're not going to be able to see it later on, which is something that was the situation with LinkedIn Lives, if I recall correctly, when they were first introduced. Now, of course, there's an instant replay. Audio events also don't provide in-event comments, so you can't provide feedback to the host, for example. There are reactions, but nothing that's going to help the host understand what you might be trying to deal with. The only way you can do that is bring people on stage and let them speak to the entire group. So we think that these might well become a great source of posts later on, although once they certainly have, the replays have become available. But I would say that if you're going to be using other people's voices in your reposting, then you're going to need to have their permission for that. LinkedIn Lives, we're a great convert to LinkedIn Lives, of course, now that we're doing our Linkability webinars from here. And they make a great source of post content. We regularly turn these into different forms of content, such as text posts. We've done several ebooks. We do short videos, newsletter items, and quote image posts. From anything that might have been said within the event. Now, you could also turn the audio from a LinkedIn Live into a video, just without the pictures too. And if you've not yet jumped on the LinkedIn Live bandwagon, we highly recommend them for reaching a wider audience. They're not as simple to do as you think, but once you get them underway, they're not terribly difficult, although, as we've already discovered today, there might be the odd hiccup from time to time. And one advantage of them is that you do get a notification on the screen when you go live to all your connections, so that they have a choice to decide whether they want to show up or whether they don't. And of course, you can live stream across multiple platforms too. So we love LinkedIn Lives. So then let's have a look at the final section today, the 7 ways to turn events into content. So let's say you run a LinkedIn Live. How do you turn those into content? Well, let's look first at short video. If you download the live file as an MP4, then you can cut it into sections, top and tail it with an intro and an outro if you wanted to do that, and bam, you've got new content. Videos on LinkedIn should be short, from about 30 seconds to about 2 minutes. You can create posts as well in advance of your event. And when you promote it and talk about the topics that you're going to cover and introduce your guest speaker, you set the scene. And after the event, you can use text from any transcription that you might have had done and use that in multiple posts over time. And this gives you an opportunity to talk in more detail about the material you've presented. And that's great for building your reputation as an expert. Then you could do what we do and have your webinars transcribed afterwards so that you can reuse the entire content. Now, we use rev.com because that's a good option, and it costs about $100 for us for an hour of talk. And from there, you can edit the text, you can add subheadings and have it set out nicely by a designer, which is what we do. And these give you then an opportunity to add some promotional material or add direct to your newsletter, perhaps, because we think that that's an excellent way of doing it. Now, you can add them to your newsletter before the event as a promo, and you can add them to it afterwards. I hope you're doing a newsletter, because these are doing very well in terms of a content format at the moment. It's also the advantage of people who've not necessarily heard about the event. They can catch up with the replay if they want to. And again, you can take some of the content and you could feature it in your newsletter. Number 5 is you could create an article for your blog or on LinkedIn. And this is another great use of your event content because it might appeal to a different audience. You could place it on your website to give it more Google SEO reach than you'd get on LinkedIn. There's another option. But on LinkedIn, we're seeing articles increasing in view numbers, which we think is really interesting and seems to be on the back of newsletters. So it may be that using articles on LinkedIn is something that we should be revisiting and doing potentially a bit more of. Turning your event into a document post isn't difficult because you've already got the main points because you've done the presentation and they're already in presentation format. So all you need to do is to edit them potentially and add an introduction and you're away. You might decide to use it in a different sort of a way, but using it in the same format that you presented your presentation is something that's quite simple. And then the final one is to turn it into a podcast. Now, these are an increasingly popular form of marketing, and our co-author on our Business Gold book, that's Michelle J. Raymond. She has a habit of turning her lives into podcasts, and then she shares them or broadcasts them on Spotify and all the other channels. And we think that that's a great way to be able to get to reach a new audience with content that they might not otherwise have heard about. So adding them into a podcast, if that's something that you've decided you're going to do, is an excellent idea. Now, those are the things that we wanted to cover today. And we've put quite a bit of time into finding out what's actually new, what's working and what's not. And I hope we've covered a few things that might be of interest to you that you can then take away and try for yourself. Now, we would like to invite you, if you don't already follow me, please do, and connect to me. Now, I have creator mode turned on, and so that means it's a little more difficult to connect to me, but I always welcome connections from people, particularly those who've been on our webinars. So please do make the effort to connect with me. I would love to have you in my network and to be in yours. And please do follow our Linkability page. That's where we have our newsletter, we have posts about LinkedIn, and we also have the information about our members site. Now, we have a site where there's just loads and loads and loads of content, more pieces than I can count. It's really an encyclopedia about LinkedIn, and has all the information that you need to know, kept up to date about what's going on LinkedIn, what's new, what's coming, and gives you a really good understanding of what it is that LinkedIn is currently doing, and how you can use it to achieve your professional goals. So please do pop over to our member site, take a look, see if it's something that you would like to be a part of, and you are very welcome to join us for the first week for absolutely free. And now then, I want to have a look and see whether we've got any questions that I can have an answer to, and we will start with this one from Wayne. Now, he's saying that we'll soon be able to share LinkedIn posts direct to Facebook and Twitter. And should we do that, and in what circumstances? So that's a great question, Wayne. Thank you. And it is true that LinkedIn is rolling this out. This is going to be an ability to be able to just copy your posts direct across to your Facebook or to your Twitter accounts, and potentially other platforms too. Now, I've always said that LinkedIn is a different format and a different audience to other types of social media. Facebook and Instagram I see as more recreational. Twitter I just see as a bullfight, and LinkedIn I see as a professional platform where we all need to be thinking about what we are doing in a professional sense. Now, it may be true that you have some of your clients or some of your LinkedIn connections as Facebook friends or on other platforms, and they might be interested in what you're doing on LinkedIn. So I think that my best advice on this one is going to be caution. I am not convinced that this is going to be a good thing. However, I've found that with LinkedIn, over time, trends change, people change, the way we use LinkedIn changes. And so I am just going to keep an open mind, and I'm just going to see how that works over a period of time, and just see whether or not we think that that is going to be the way to do it. But my guess is probably not, and I shall be watching with a great deal of interest what is going on. And all right, so I think then that seems to be it for today. I really do appreciate you being with us. I would again like to invite you to connect, to follow our Linkability page, and to check out our membership site. We would love to have you with us. Do join our LinkedIn audio event next week. We'd love to see people along experimenting with the new audio event feature. But thank you very much for joining us today, and we will see you again on the next one. Bye for now.